Hi everybody, my name's Robert Boyle. I run the Beechmount herd of Irish moiled cattle down in Malile here. Um, Recently, I had killed an Irish moiled bullock just before Christmas there, and I am a butcher to trade, and I was able to break it down and do some costings on it. Also, I made a series of video clips, both of the animal prior to slaughter and during the boning out process of the animal. I think you might find the following clips quite interesting. As he was 560 kilos live weight. He only had a 50% kill out, which would be about the normal for Irish moiled bullocks. And he was just about 24 months old. So if he was being put through the factory, he say he killed 278 kilos dead weight, and because he's a no 4L, he would be out of spec for factories, and the price you would get, you could possibly only get 360, 370 a kilo for him, which would realise maybe £1,000, 950 to £1,000 for the bullock. But to turn them into beef boxes, that's why we're trying to encourage as many breeders or finishers as possible to do their own beef boxes. I have calculated that you would get 20 sort of 8-9 kilo beef boxes out of this particular beast, which you could sell easily for £100 per box, maybe more. In which case you would double the amount of revenue you would get for that particular animal. So say, have a look at the videos that will follow. It is maybe half an hour longer or more, but I think you'll find it quite interesting. And if anybody has any questions or queries about it, please don't hesitate to contact me either through the Irish Moiled Beef forum page on Facebook or the WhatsApp group, what has been started as well. So I hope you find the following videos interesting, and here it goes. Here we have an Irish moiled bullock. He's just under 24 months of age. He's about 560 kilos. Quite a nice bullock. He's a great length of a bullock, so he has. He's a fantastic back on him, a good bit of depth on it, nice bit of cover. You can see at the back end there, he's maybe getting a wee bit puffy. I would say it could possibly be a 4L, a good 3 anyway, but more likely a 4L. But quite a nice bullock. The next few video clips will be of the hindquarter of beef hanging in the cool room, and then onto the block and getting boned out and split into the various primal cuts. Well, here we have the two hindquarters hanging of that bullock. They're not killed out, not too bad. You can still see that wee bit of fattiness at the pin bones there, and over the sirloins you can see quite a bit of fat cover on them. He did kill actually a 4L, so he did. In this here clip, it shows you the hindquarter on the block ready for splitting. It's just to let you see in along there, that's where your fillet steak would lie, where my hand is running now. I take the fillet out a wee bit earlier than normal to save it from drying out. Right, here we have the head hindquarter on the block here. It's ready for splitting off. Firstly, I'm taking the shin off the far side here, and we haven't kept any of the shin when I was manufacturing. I just boned the shin out and used it all for lean trim for mince, because it was more suitable for what I needed. This particular side of beef, I am cutting up. It's all basically for family use. So I've cut it in a way that I know it'd be more beneficial to me and the family, as into what cuts of meat that we would eat. That's the sirloin. I'm just taking off there now. Say there is no fillet on the underside of it because I had taken it out at an earlier stage, as I say, before it would dry out too much. It used to be left the kidney fat hanging in the hindquarters, which was great. It protected the fillet from the air and stopped it from drying out. But if you're hanging a hindquarter for maybe 3 weeks or so, the fillet can dry exceptionally. Only with taking the fillet out, you can't cut T-bones if you have your fillet out, but I hadn't intended cutting any T-bones. That's just a mark now, and I'm taking the jump off, just so the H-bone there, and then I'm just going to slice right in through it with a knife, and that should come right across the end of the hip bone. As you can see, the bit of gristle in the middle of that, it's a sort of just skimming the end of the hip bone. Now we're just going to take a few more bits and pieces off it here before we split it any further. Okay, I've the end bone taken off that ham and just trimming a wee bit of surplus fat off. And then I'm making a mark down here that was just taking the feather off. That is the ham bone that you see. The bit to the right hand side is your top side of beef for use for roasts. The feather, which I'm now taking off the side of the ham bone, it's usually used for frying steak. Though in this case now, we as a family wouldn't use frying steak as a cut, so I have seamed out the top end of it where it connects to the top side, and used it, cut it into roasts, and the other end, as I've seamed out and sliced it very thin, and used it for stir fry, which is a more beneficial to us. But they say you could slice that whole thing, the feather out, as good frying steak, depending on what your needs are. As you can see now, that is the ham bone that I'm just taking out now out of the ham of beef. And what will leave you then with, say, that bit with the dark on it, where you can see it's dried out, that's your whole top side of beef. And the bit on the other side that's lying on the block is your silver side of beef. So we just split that in two. There is a natural seam running down there, which it makes it fairly handy to split and dissect. The top side then will be trimmed up and cut into nice blocks for roasting. On the silver side there, you see on the left hand side of it, that's your top side there. You know, just needs a bit more trimming prior to cutting. This here bit that I'm going to take out now is just trimmed some fat there off the top end of it, but it'll be your eye of silver side. I'm sure you're very familiar with the eye of silver side. It is a very, very popular cut with customers in butcher shops because it's a nice long slender cut of beef, and when it comes, it's easy to roast off, and it's very, very easy to slice then because it's in a nice full length. And it's very well sought after. I personally like it's the eye there. I personally like the jump end of the silver side, or the point where I'm cutting there now. That's what we call the steak end, where it connects to the hind shin. It's more a stewing type beef. But then this is a silver side flat, which then can be cut into good square blocks for roasting. The steak end here would trim it up. We could take the best parts off it. We could dice them into steak pieces, and all the rest then can be made for minced steak. This here now is the jump of beef. I'm just trimming it up a bit, and we'll take it off the bone, and we'll talk a bit more now when we get it off the bone. Now here you see we have the bone taken off the jump, so I'm just trimming some of the surplus fat off the top of it. There is quite a bit of waste on your 4L animal. It'll eat a lot better for having that bit of fat on it, but it can be quite wasty. Later on I'll put figures on the video to show you the boning out percentage. This is bone. I'm taking the flap off the bottom of the jump here. This is what you call decutting the jump. I think it makes a better jump, easier sliced out. At the minute now I'm taking the cap off the jump. Now the cap, I would use this for a slow roast. Most butcher shops would just leave that cap on and slice the jump out with that on it. But I prefer to take it off. It makes a much nicer slice of jump steak, so it does. Plus the cap is an absolutely lovely piece of beef for slow roasting. It turns out the flavour of it, that fat over the top, is absolutely lovely. So you just trim some of the extra surplus fat off it. But they say that cap for slow roasting is a real lovely cut of beef. So it is. It's not very big on this particular animal, but it's very, very tasty. So then we have the shin of beef here, which we would cut into slices for shin to boil. But in this case, I have minced it just. Here I have the sirloins all sliced out and ready to pack. As I say, you can see a nice covering of fat right over the back of this animal, and a nice wee bit of marble right through the steak. That's very, very nice. This should eat very well. I'm looking forward to trying some. So here we have the hindquarter all packed up too. The sirloins there and your silver side roasts, fillet steaks. Some of the rolled roast too, steak pieces, the rump steak there at the back, and your sirloins all vacked up there, all looking very well. And there, the next few video clips will be of the forequarter, firstly hanging in the cool room, and then onto the block to be split down and boned out into the various cuts. The forequarter is mainly apart from the rib of beef, it's mainly your cheaper type cuts, but be interesting to see. Here now we have the forequarters of that particular bullock. The forequarters look a lot leaner, funny enough, than what the hindquarters did. But he was a 4L, and he killed out 278 kilos. Here we have the forequarter on the block now, ready for splitting. And first of all, I'm taking the shin, the foreshin off here. Again, I'm just going to use this for lean trim and bone it all out to make mince, because we wouldn't use the shin for soup within our family ourselves. As I said, I'm cutting this side of beef for my own use. There is so many other different ways you can cut it. Obviously, if you're slice your shin out on the bone, you'd have a better yielding weight, but as I say, I'll be boning it out. So now I'm just counting up. There's 10 ribs in a forequarter there, so I'm counting up 5 and splitting it down there. And the bit at this end here is your rib of beef, which can be used then for either rib roast, boneless rib roast, or you can have it on the bone. There's different ways of doing it. I myself am going to bone it out completely and have ribeye steaks, because steaks would be at more advantage to us here. So splitting it down, this bit I'm sawing here down here now is the brisket. I'm taking off. I'm cutting it fairly long brisket and a fairly short rib, because it suits my cutting better. And this year now I'm sawing the rib off, although here my saw that I was using at this stage here was blunt. When the saw goes blunt, it just doesn't cut straight at all. So I'm just going to change the saw here and get a sharper one. It makes such a difference when you've got the proper tools and good tools. It makes any job so much easier. It just saws through nice and clean then, no problem. So that's the rib of beef that I've taken off. As I said, I'm going to bone that all out and take ribeye steaks. Plus the back of it, I would put a liner in it and roll that up into a slow roasting pot roast. Flicking it over now, I'm going to make a couple of saw cuts there to the left. That would be your breast for it to roll into pot roast, or sometimes it's known as the brisket of beef. Americans would call it more the brisket of beef for slow roasting. But again, I would trim that out and bone it all out and roll it up as a pot roast. Again, it is a slow roast, and it's very, very nice. Right, I have the breast off there, as you've seen. So now I'm taking this is what we call the well, the old school butchers anyway would call this the thick plate, and also the round bone, which would give you in the older days it was that round bone stewing beef. But there's very, very little stewing beef now is sold on the bone. Butchering techniques have changed a lot over the years, and there's a lot of what they call sim butchery now, which divides the various muscles into different, more defined characters, for different types of cooking. In the thick plate here now, it can normally be used as a braising steak, but as I say, within our own family here, braising steak isn't a cut that we would use a terrible lot of. So I'm just going to cut it into roasts. It roasts every bit as good as silver side, so it does. It's a very nice. So that's a chuck of beef there, and your thick plate and round bone. Now just bring this over here. That's your breast, the top breast, which will begin rolled into a nice slow roasting pot roast. And the rib of beef, say, which I am going to use for ribeye steaks, or can be used as a roast on the bone or boneless. Then we have the brisket. The brisket now I'm just going to use completely for manufacturing, for sausages, burgers, vegetable roll. Likewise the shin, I'm just going to bone the shin all out completely to give us extra mince. Okay, here we have the thick plate. I'm just going to take this off here. Just taking some bits of lean trim off. This bit that you see here now, that it's just seams off. That's what we call the Jacob's ladder. It's a lovely piece of beef for slow roasting, so it is, especially with an animal like this that has so much fat cover and marbling on it. It's really, really nice. Then again, we're just trimming more fat off this here, and we'll be splitting this then, where we're taking the thick plate off, which is the larger square piece, which is usually used in butchers for sliced out for braising steak, although I am just going to cut it into blocks for roasting. Again here, this is the round bone, what we normally would have been sold as round bone stewing beef in days gone by. But I'm just going to bone it all out and use the lean trim for mince. Here we have the chuck, which is one of the more intricate parts to bone out because of all the bones and joints. Some play well, mostly in factories nowadays. They would sheet what they call sheet this out in a big lot. But to me, there's a terrible waste with that. So again, maybe an old school, just take each individual bone out one at a time. To me, I think it's a lot cleaner, but it certainly is a lot slower. The chuck here, once we do get it all boned out, it was mainly the neck part of it. Again, will be used for lean trim for mince. And the top part of the chuck will be rolled as a pot roast. The centre part will be taken out for steak pieces and maybe it's use of it for liners for pot roast. Here we have it's nice we cut, this is Jacob's ladder that I showed you earlier on. It's usually left on the bone, although you can roast it boneless or cut that in two again into short ribs. It's a very, very popular we cut. Very nice when it's slow roasted and cooked. Just taking a bit of surplus fat off the back of it, but definitely a joint well worth the roasting, I say, for slow cooking. Next, then I'm going to have the chuck here now, which I've boned out completely because I take the bones out individually. Usually in factories, they're all sheeted out. It takes less time, but I'm old school and do it individually. This piece that I'm taking out now is the what they call the back strap. If you feel the back of your neck, there's two strong sinews running down each side of the back of your neck. That's what this particular piece is. It's a very, very strong sinew. You really do need a sharp knife to try and cut through it. So next I'll be taking the shoulder blade out here, but I'm going to fast forward through this here now, save a bit of time. Well, here we have the what I would call the top breast. This is the breastbone right at the very front of the beast. I'm sure you've seen the strong breastbone right between the animal's two front legs. That's that bone there that I'm just taking out now. There is quite a bit of fat over the front of it. So say now this is the breast we're just taking off. So you can see the big knob of fat, which would be right at the point of the breast. That all has to be trimmed out and sorted for sausage trim, etc. And then again, the top breast here, then there's a lot of trimming involved in it. So just taking all the fat and various sinews out of it, all the bits and pieces, the lean will be kept for mince, and the fatter trim for sausages, vegetable roll, etc. So, but once this here is all trimmed out, it will be then rolled up into a nice pot roast for slow roasting. Well, this is the 4/4 split down. That's your rib of beef you've seen there, and this here the top breast, which is all trimmed out, ready to roll. The brisket here, which is say we'll be just using for manufacturing for burgers, etc. This here's the Jew's fillet, as we call it, was sliced out for a daub of beef, and the piece beside it there is for flat iron steaks. Then we'll have your Jacob's ladder here, as we talked about earlier on, lovely slow roast. Then that piece behind it is your chuck, which will mainly be cut into steak pieces. And the other bit behind it there is the thick plate, which would be used for oven roast. Here we have the waste of it now. That's a bag or a tray of all bones and fat. A bucket there with fat trim in it. And then another bucket there with lean trim in it, which will be for mince. Here we have the rib of beef, which would split off the 4/4. We're just going to bone it out now. As I say, there's so many things you can do with the rib of beef. You can have it to roast on the bone, or you can roll the whole thing up as one big joint as a boneless rolled rib roast. You can cut down, trim some of the back fat off, and cut down right in between each rib, and have what they call tomahawk steaks. They are very, very big steaks, very, very good, but they're massive big steaks. And I think for my use, I think it's better to bone it out. I know our own family here will get better use out of ribeye steaks. This wee bit along the back here is actually the continuation of the back strap that we took out of the chuck earlier. This runs right down the back of the rib roast, actually right till about halfway down the sirloin, right halfway down the animal's back. So it's quite a long sinew, so it is. So then we just sheet these ribs out, because then I say we can trim the ribs down then. The meat in between each of the ribs will be used for either mince or burgers. So there is quite a bit of waste when you're taking it down as far as this to get ribeye steaks. There is quite a bit of waste in it. We'll go through boning percentages later on. But when you see that with your rib, when you've started it on the bone, to what you actually have left for your ribeye steaks, it is a very small percentage of the total weight of the rib. Say this is the rib eye that I'm just taking out here now. It is a lovely cut. Rib eyes now are every bit as, or if not even more, expensive than sirloin steak. They've become very, very popular, so they have. So that's it. Pretty well just trim this wee bit of fat off the side of it there. And that's it, basically ready to slice out as rib steaks. The bit that we have left that we trimmed off, then that will be trimmed and we'll roll it as a slow pot roast. Well, here we have our rib eye here, say trimmed and all ready to slice out. The two smaller bits you see is what was the back of the rib roast, which has been all trimmed out. And a bit of a liner put in it and then rolled up, which will make two nice slow roasting joints. It could be trimmed up and used for mince as well, but as I say, from our family point of view, I think we get better value out of roasts. So that's me, say slicing all the ribeye steaks out. Ribeye steak isn't for everybody because there is quite a bit of fat in a ribeye steak. But that only adds to the flavour of the beef. It is really, really nice cut, so it is. Okay, here see we have the 4/4 cuts, basically all cut now and packed. If the mince, we vac packed these, and your steak pieces here all done up. The daub of beef, and out of the fillet, the Jew fillet, the thick plate into oven roast instead of braising steak, and the rolled roast all rolled up. The next short video clip we have is about the making of sausages. It's very interesting we film video to watch. Quite a very simple process. It might look complicated, but if you look closely, it's very, very easy to do. Okay, then this is just a short video on the sausage making process. So the meat has been all minced and mixed up with various spices and wheatmeal. And then say run through the mincer twice into the sausage filler. So this is just a short lesson on how to link. So you put a loop, twist it round, and then bring the link right over the top, press it with your thumb, and push it right through and pull it through again. Again, just a wee twist over the top again, pull it through to the right length, twist, and over the top again. And then as you get the hang of that, you'll be able to go faster and faster. Nothing to it. For the final part of this video, I just want to cover a wee bit on the grading system that we have, the EU ROP grading system. I have some visual images and a grading chart. It'll give you an idea just how the grading system works. You might find it interesting. Here we have a pricing grid for prime cattle here in Northern Ireland. This goes under the EU ROP grading system with fat classes 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 basically. But there's minus, equals and plus, which actually when you calculate it out is actually 225 grades. A bit ridiculous. This is mainly used in the VIA grading system, electronic grading system. You can see in the middle of it there's what they call the golden box. These would be the preferred grades that factories will pay bonuses on, because these are the more acceptable grades of cattle for butchers and the retail trade. This image shows carcasses of beef from the fat class point of view, being 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 1 being very lean and 5 being very fat. These in turn are subdivided into like a 4 there can be a 4, can be a 4L being light, or a 4H being heavy, before it would then go on to a class 5. But it just shows you roughly the amount of fat cover there is in the different fat grades. The bullock that we have killed here was a 4L. So you can see in the photograph that there is a lot more fat over the carcass, which aids the hanging and aging process of the carcass. Here we have a chart of the confirmation. You see in the first one they have S, although they mainly stick here to the EU ROP. I've never actually seen an S superior one. But you can see the E and U are exceptionally muscly animals, obviously continentals, with very, very large hips, a great depth of muscle. And then we shall go on to the next video, or the next image, which will show the lesser grades. Because here we have the lower grades, so the R, O and P. The bullock in question that we done earlier is the centre one there, the O grade. You can see it is quite narrow, but certainly not as narrow as your P grade animal. So the yield from this O grade animal is going to be really significantly lower than your E or U grade animals. because of the amount of flesh, the lack of the amount of flesh and conformation on the carcass. An R3 is an ideal butcher's type animal because it's just not too much fat cover, just enough for to hang, and it's a fairly good yielding beast with a fairly good amount of flesh over the hip and down the loins. Quite a nice animal. So in conclusion, I have a beef yield chart here. It shows you all the cuts that I have taken out of this side of beef and the weights. The prices I have are taken from a local shop. Just to give you a bit of an idea of what sort of money it'll turn into. Say to the 560 kilo animal, to kill out of 50%, and then the boning percentage of that is 33%. Of beef is all you have left out of from the total live weight animal, which is really only 184 kilos of beef that you have left to put into beef boxes. But I reckon you should get 20, say 8 to 9 kilo beef boxes if you were selling those, say, for £100 each. It is turning your animal into £2,000 of money, as opposed to £1,028 that you would get maybe from factories would pay, because the animal is out of spec. Say you only go get possibly £3.70 a kilo. But I say that's something for you to look at and digest. It might give you some ideas. I'm certainly happy if anybody wants to give me a ring or send me any questions or queries you want through the WhatsApp or the beef forum. I'd be only too happy to discuss them with you. And I hope this is of help to you as well, and you enjoy the video.